And welcome back to Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's Pokemon Team Creation Series request comes to us from Dennis Servin, who asked the question, what is Rogue's Pokemon team? Sorry, my dog just barked for some random reason. She does that sometimes. Rogue from X-Men, the Marvel Comics Pokemon team. This became this was a tricky one to do because obviously the big draw to Rogue, apart from obvious, like she's an attractive character, but no, I mean, the thing that's unique to Rogue is her mutation, particularly her ability to absorb life force, the energy of someone, their abilities, their memories, even kill someone and even permanently take their powers given enough time, enough connection to them. But the problem with that type of ability is there is no single ability, attack, or lore of any Pokemon that is a one-to-one example of that, or that is a one-to-one comparative thing to Rogue. There's no Pokemon lore, ability, attack that is the exact same thing as Rogue's ability. There is a bunch of abilities, attacks, Pokemon that have lore, or, as we said, attacks or abilities that are parts of her ability, absorbing life force, absorbing attacks, mimicking an attack, things along those lines. So I, in essence, had to kind of break her overall abilities apart and kind of go from there. So bear with me as we go through this team. The first one who actually, believe it or not, the first one who made it on the team is one we had on the team very recently. That's our little buddy Graveyard, the adorable little pupper who's the best puppers ever. You're the best puppers ever. But Graveyard's lore actually states that it will absorb the energy, the life force out of someone the closer it is around it. It's a very friendly Pokemon. It's not meaning to do this. It's just the nature of this Pokemon that it's doing that. So because that is the nature of this Pokemon, I had to put it on there. There's a lot of scenarios where this team could have been honestly majority ghost types, because a lot of ghost types absorb life force from opponents, from Pokemon, and that would have translated pretty well to Rogue's ability. Pretty well, but not 100%. And the reason for that is life force isn't solely what Rogue is absorbing. She's absorbing ability, she's absorbing memory, she's absorbing experience, she's absorbing all that when she does absorb. So excuse me if you hear something, I'm just adjusting the seat I'm in. I need a new chair. Right out the back gate, I can tell I need a different chair in this room. I'm trying something different with the layout of where I'm doing my videos. But so that was the first one that made it onto the team. The second one, believe it or not, that made it on the team was not a Mon that has any connection to any of those abilities, but it's Absol. Now, why Absol? Absol is known as the disaster Pokemon. Well, Rogue's not necessarily a walking disaster. She can be, and she has been a problem in the past, but she's ultimately not like a disaster. She's not the Hulk. So why would I put an Absol on the team? Well, it comes from the fact that it's what the lore of Absol actually brings. It's the fact that this Pokemon is not welcomed in a lot of areas. It's kind of ostracized. It is considered, it's considered a bringer of disasters, although what it's doing really is predicting the disasters and trying to warn people. So because of that, it's actually not well liked, usually, and therefore people try to just have it disappear and go away, and they don't want it around. This actually is very much how Rogue sometimes she feels ostracized. She feels an outcast. Even in the mutant world, she feels like an outcast. She can't have normal relationships most of the time because she can't touch anyone without, having gloves or something on. So ultimately, I think her and Absol could be like a really good bonded pair. This could even be her partner Pokemon, like two good-hearted individuals who are lonely because, people hate them for things that are outside of their control. I could see that very well bonding. This next one, honestly, whenever I get around doing a Mystique video, this would be on Mystique's team more than her team, but ditto. Now, this is going into her quirk. I'm watching too much My Hero. Her mutation. Because, like I said, there's no single Mon out there that is capable of doing everything Rogue is doing in one. You have to basically get a couple Mon that can do a portion of what she's capable of doing. Ditto represents the ability of more or less mimicking all the abilities of an opponent, and in Rogue's case, stealing the powers of the opponent temporarily. And Ditto does that. He doesn't steal the powers of a Pokemon, but he basically is a perfect copy of said mon he's being a copy of, until he decides to transform into something else, or transform back, and then he loses all those abilities. Much how Rogue only holds on to those abilities of whoever she touches for only so long, unless she touches for an extended period of time, like with Miss Marvel, and copies her physicality. So Ditto, I felt, would make it to the list. I knew one type of mon that had to be on the team was a Pokemon that could learn the move Mimic. The thought of Sketch also came to mind, but Sketch is a permanent learn too. But Smeargle's the only one I know, and Smeargle and Mew technically. Smeargle is the only one I know that can learn Sketch, and Smeargle in terms of in terms of design and what it's based off and whatever, I didn't feel it worked quite as well. I like Smeargle. In hindsight being 2020, Smeargle in this next mon, or any mon learns Mimic for that matter, is very you could have it be the case where Smeargle could represent the permanent taking of powers that Rogue can sometimes do if she holds on for long enough. But I went with a different route here. It's a mon that can learn Mimic, and Gen 9 actually doesn't have a lot of Mimic learning Pokemon. Gen 8 and beyond, you could go a little further than that, but still, there's actually not a lot of Pokemon that can learn Mimic. I ultimately went with, and hear me out on this, Mimikyu. Mimikyu is a mon that hides on the guise of a Pikachu disguise because it wants to be loved and liked by everyone else, but it can't because if you look at it, it could kill you. Well, guess what? While it's not exactly one-to-one with Rogue, Rogue is very beautiful on the outside. She's a friendly personality. People like her as a friend. And, Gambit has been more than a few times in romantically and wanting to be romantically involved with her, but doesn't work out all the time. But unfortunately, underneath, skin deep, in her DNA, she has the ability to kill you just by touching you. She tries her best to fit in, but she knows it's just difficult to do given her state. Now, by the way, I should note that in the comics, they've figured out ways to kind of depower her temporarily or whatever, so she can, in fact, have relationships. Or there have been characters that are just not affected by her abilities. The Sentry was one. I believe her and the Sentry were actually involved for a while. Hell, in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, her and Magneto, because Magneto could put a magnetic barrier around his body that basically means that even though they could feels like they were touching, they weren't. Because of that, he could touch her. There have been instances where that's happened, or she's been depowered. But generally speaking, we're looking at not depowered Rogue with her abilities. So Mimikyu, I think, is a kind of unique example of this. And I checked, it can learn Mimic. So Mimikyu is kind of a unique example of this, but I think it's a unique example that does ultimately work. I always liked Mimikyu. Mimikyu was a cute design. I do like that. Can you imagine? I've always liked the idea of the Gigantamax or Mega Evolution Mimikyu where you actually see what's underneath. But apparently it does actually kill you because we saw in the anime it killed Meowth and one of his 9 lives had to come back to his body. Either way. So beyond that, there's also the other facet of her body where it's absorbing life force, absorbing health. And that's translated into HP in the Pokemon world. So I knew I needed a Pokemon who could learn either Leech Seed, Leech Life, or maybe Giga Drain. I went with Giga Drain because her ability is on a pretty high level. And going through all the mon that can learn Giga Drain, I settled on Hisuian Lilligant. And this really is more an aesthetic feel. It's very feminine looking, but it's a fighting type as well, which means you get the rough and tough nature that Rogue carries with her. And still being able to learn Giga Drain means that it can still absorb HP and absorb life force, whatnot. So Hisuian Lilligant for that. Last but not least, there is still the concept, or the issue of why, when she had the permanent power gain she did gain when she touched Captain Marvel, the increase in power she ultimately got. I wanted a fighting type on the team. We have one already, but I wanted another fighting type on the team. I wanted a fighting type on the team because she's not a martial artist. She's got hand-to-hand training, certainly, but she's not a martial artist. But she is an experienced fighter. But she's more of a brawler with a lot of strength on her side that she also uses her ability to fly in conjunction with. So I knew I wanted a fighting type. And I wanted a fighting type that was known for strength, that was strong. Not just like, hey, here's Hitmonchan who punches really hard. Here's Hitmonlee who kicks really hard. Here's Medicham who's a monk with yoga meditation, psychic fighting guys. No. I wanted something that is like I'm a champ or something. Didn't want to go Machamp. I wanted to try to go a little different than what I've normally done. So I'm looking, I'm like, okay, let's look at all these fighting types. Ooh, I like this one, this one. Ah, this is the one. So I went with Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr I liked simply just because it's a mon that literally carries 2 giant stone. How it wasn't a rock fighting type, I agree with a lot of people. I don't know. It's literally got kind of a rock-like beard under its chin. Either way. So I liked Conkeldurr a lot. It's one I haven't actually used on a team as far as I can tell. It uses these giant stone like rocks. It just shows like it's a representation of just sheer strength on its part. I just like the idea of Conkeldurr as the fighting type Pokemon. So ultimately, that is the team I have made. In terms to represent her full mutation, I went Ditto, Graveyard, Mimikyu, and Hisuian Lilligant. Absol represents the idea that she's kind of isolated even in her own community, and that she's not shunned, but she isn't always welcome. And I think these two this Pokemon and her could really well bond over that. Add on to the idea that that Mimikyu represents a little bit of that as well. Hisuian Lilligant and Conkeldurr represent the idea of the fighting type, as well as a bit more of her energy, life force absorption with her mutation. So ultimately, that is her team. How balanced of a team is this? Well, it's a lot more balanced than some of the other teams I've done, but not as much as you might think. It's a team it's got 2 ghost types. One of them's dual. It's got 2 fighting types. One of them's dual. It's got 1 normal type that can just turn into whatever the mon is. So that kind of Ditto is kind of a wild card in this, that we can't really judge the weakness of the team on that. So Ditto kind of just takes a side seat in that regard. As for everyone else, though, Graveyard being a ghost and Mimikyu being a ghost means that they're still weak to other ghosts, and Mimikyu's fairy type at least mitigates the weakness to dark. But there's one weakness to bug and fighting in terms of Absol. Hisuian Lilligant is quad weak to flying, standard weak to fire, psychic, all of the standard weaknesses fighting and grass have apart from that. And Conkeldurr's got the standard fighting weaknesses. So it's not like a super balanced team, but it's also not a super weak team either. It's okay. Plus, Ditto can know just about any technique. Absol's got a pretty wide move pool. So does Mimikyu, because being ghosts usually have a pretty wide move pool, and fairies have a solid move pool as well. Lilligant and Conkeldurr can make up the speed and heavy hitting. Then you get your specials with your Mimikyu or support. Then you got your wild card there with Absol. Maybe it could be Mega, maybe it could not. And then Ditto is your real wild card with whatever form it may take at the time. But I digress. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Do you like this team for the character of Rogue, or do you not? Let me know in the comments below. But until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you folks for the next one.